Speaker, the adverse effects of the El Nino crisis are significantly impacting a lot of critical facets of our country. The rains are disrupting the ongoing national exams for students with potential long-term consequences on the education and future prospects of students. In Mandera County, numerous schools are also being utilized as refugee shelters, posing challenges to both the displaced individuals and the educational institutions involved. Some vital healthcare facilities, including hospitals, are submerged, rendering them inaccessible. This has unfortunately left the affected population without access to medical assistance in the wake of dangerous outbreak of diseases. Honorable Speaker, it is disheartening to note that private individuals have had to step in actively to engage in rescue and relief efforts, underlying the urgency and the gravity of the situation. The current death toll stands at 46, with over 14 reported injuries, and the potential for further casualties is imminent if immediate action is not taken. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I seek leave for adjournment of the House to discuss this matter of great national concern with a view to exploring possible and long-lasting solutions. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Do you have the requisite support? The support is overwhelming. Honorable members, you may take your seats. You may take your seats now. Honorable member for Mandera Central. Order, honorable members. Order, Honorable Bowen and your group. Honorable members, I direct that having garnered the requisite support numbers, this motion of adjournment will be moved at the end of the business at order number 12 or at 5:30, whichever comes earlier. Are we together, honorable member? At the end of the business at order number 12 or at 5:30, whichever comes earlier. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Next.
Order number 8, procedural motion, reduction of publication period of a specified bill.
Chairperson, Budget and Appropriations Committee.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I wish to move that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 120, that this House resolves to reduce the publication period of the supplementary appropriation number 3 bill, National Assembly Bill number 71 of 2023, from 7 days to 4 days. And Honorable Speaker, the essence of this, as members are aware, there is nothing much happening in regards to government, and that is affecting actually this House just like any other agency of government, because when there is process like the one we are undertaking now for supplementary estimates, as members are aware, the system of government, famously known as IFMIS, usually does not operate. And the reason for this, Honorable Speaker, is usually because some of the effects we are making on the budget, some MDAs could proceed, for example, to expend the monies probably which have already been proposed for cuts. So the essence of actually locking, in quotes, the IFMIS is usually for tidiness of government financials, because the process we are undertaking now is to vary the budget. And we cannot now be expending the same monies that we are varying. So the essence of this motion is for us to be able to conclude the debate in regards to appropriations bill today, and henceforth then conclude the matter of supplementary estimate, so that then we can free up resources to go into our CDF, to go into our roads, to go into our water, for Parliament to operate, and any other government agency. And Honorable Speaker, I request the very eloquent member for Kirinyaga, Honorable Jerry, to second.
It's an eloquence here.
Honorable Speaker, I rise to second, and I thank my very good friend and role model to many of the young politicians, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro, the member for Kiharu. Honorable Speaker, indeed, we need the country to be able to operate, and I am seeking that once this is done, Treasury releases the funds with immediate effect so that we can get back to work. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Njeri. Honorable members, I now propose the question that pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 120, this House resolves to reduce the publication period of the Supplementary Appropriation Number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 71 of 2023, from 7 days to 4 days. Is that the mood of the House? I'll now put the question, which is that pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 120, this House resolves to reduce the publication period of the Supplementary Appropriation Number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 71 of 2023 from 7 days to 4 days. As members of that opinion say aye. Aye. Will those of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Order. Honorable Mwenje, before we declared you whip, you are fighting to sit on the front bench. Now that we have done so, you've shifted to the back bench. Okay, next order.
Order number 9, the Supplementary Appropriation Number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 71 of 2023, first reading. An Act of Parliament, a bill for an Act of Parliament to authorize the issue of certain sums of money out of the Consolidated Fund and the application towards the service of the year ending on the 30th June 2024, and to appropriate those sums for certain public services and purposes.
Next order.
Order number 10, the Supplementary Appropriations Number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 71 of 2023, second reading.
Chairman, Budget and Appropriations Committee, Honorable Ndindi Nyoro.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I wish to move that the Supplementary Appropriations Number 3 Bill, National Assembly Bill Number 71 of 2023 be read for a second time. And Honorable Speaker, as members are aware, last week we robustly debated the report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee in regards to the supplementary estimates. And therefore, I'll just highlight just but a few of the issues that are already here in this supplementary, in this bill, of the Supplementary Appropriations Bill, that is Supplementary 1 of 2023. And Honorable Speaker, I was able to appraise the members of the fact that the essence of this supplementary budget that we are currently debating today and hopefully conclude by end of this session, the reason why we had to do this supplementary budget at this time is primarily hedged on only three things. One of the critical things that we are doing in rearranging government financials in this supplementary estimates 1, the main thing was the repayment of interest rates of the obligations that we owe both domestically and externally. And Honorable Speaker, as members are aware, we passed the budget, the main budget in June, but from June to date, there has been dynamics across the money markets. And the money markets are the ones that affect the cost of money. One, Honorable Speaker, is that we have seen a rise or increase in interest rates here locally, as we have seen increase in foreign or global interest rates. Honorable Speaker, most of our foreign debt is dollar denominated. And even to start with the global figure about our debt, is that Kenya, give or take, has around 10-point-something trillion Kenya shillings in debt. And out of which 50% of that debt is foreign. Most of the foreign debt is dollar denominated. Honorable Speaker, from January to date, our local currency, the cash, has lost over 21%. And therefore, in consequence, what that means is that around 4.3 trillion Kenya shillings that we owed by the beginning of this year has been able to escalate to around 5.3 trillion, majority of which is not money that we have borrowed, but just the variations in our local currency in regards to the dollar, which is a denomination that is used in most of our borrowing. And therefore, the essence of the monies that we are enhancing is basically to be able to provide for that. 145 billion Kenya shillings in this supplementary budget is going to just enhance the payment of our interest rates, both domestically and also in terms of foreign debt. Honorable Speaker, some members, and it's important that I clarify. Why do we have to keep up on raising our interest rates as a country? Why is T-bills now having much more yield than they were having in June? Honorable Speaker, when we are looking at the economy and looking at something we call balance of payment has two components. One is in the current account that records the net imports, that is the X minus M. But then there is another one that records capital inflows minus the capital outflows. Now what happens is that when the other global interest rates are rising, if the current or the domestic interest rates that does not go in tandem, then what happens, Honorable Speaker, is that we make other economies more attractive for investment. And that is why Kenya cannot be isolated. When the global interest rates are rising, Kenya also raises so that we can also attract capital inflows within the country. That is one of the reasons we had to raise or to increase our budget in this supplementary budget. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, is that when we are doing the budgeting for a country, we use financial years. That is from June to June. But when the country is doing other arrangements, for example, education, we do that cognizant of the calendar year. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, one of the other reasons that we did this supplementary budget in regards to figures is that we needed to capacitate our education sector by capitalizing it more. So what we have done in that regard, Honorable Speaker, is that we have added but over 70 billion Kenya shillings into our education sector. Honorable Speaker, it is important that I let the members know that our education sector currently is taking up 700 billion Kenya shillings of our budget, which is commendable, Honorable Speaker, because these are monies that are going into the tomorrow of our country. And Honorable Speaker, this is an investment. Honorable Speaker, out of that money that is going to education, 5.4 billion Kenya shillings is going into JESS capitation, because we are adding much more money into JESS so that parents do not have to cough money out of their pockets come January, and especially for those who will be joining JESS in January. Honorable Speaker, secondly, we have been able to add over 20 billion Kenya shillings into our higher education. Honorable Speaker, we have capitalized our help more to be able to give loans to higher education students and also to provide scholarships to higher education students and especially universities. Honorable Speaker, also we have added over 5 billion Kenya shillings into our TVETs. This money is going into payments of scholarships also to TVET students. Honorable Speaker, there is something I also want members to put a keen listening ear on. Honorable Speaker, in education, and Honorable Speaker, is important for members to note, we have added an extra 3.4 billion Kenya shillings into JSS infrastructure, that is laboratories, and that is other infrastructure related to JSS. And something we have done is that we have moved this money from the Ministry of Education. In this appropriations bill, if you check, 3.4 billion Kenya shillings we removed from the Ministry of Education, and we took that money to the Department of Planning so that that money goes to NGCDF for these members of this House to manage the construction of JSS infrastructure. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, we have been able to add 1 billion Kenya shillings. You know, Honorable Speaker, Nairobi is our capital. Whether we come from any other area of the country, from Murang'a to Taveta to Marsabit to Ireret in Marsabit or any other area, Nairobi is still our pride as our capital. But Honorable Speaker, Nairobi County has the highest number of school-going children who have no access to education. So what we have done in that regard is that we have added Nairobi County Kenya shillings 1 billion, monies that will go into enhancing infrastructure in our primary schools and secondary schools within Nairobi, because statistics in the Ministry of Education is very clear that Nairobi County is much more disadvantaged when it comes to infrastructure, and that is why many school-going children are not able to access education. Honorable Speaker, the third thing that made us have this supplementary budget is primarily the domain of our economy. The domain of our economy is that Kenya is still agrarian in nature. Honorable Speaker, agriculture employs the bulk of the Kenyan citizens. Actually, in rural areas, 70% of the residents in rural areas are employed by the value chains around agriculture. And Honorable Speaker, what we have done is that we have added 8.25 billion Kenya shillings into fertilizer subsidy for the next season. Honorable Speaker, we have also added more NCPB to mop up maize, Honorable Speaker, and we have also added monies for post-harvest management when it comes to maize, because we are expecting a bumper harvest as farmers are harvesting. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, we were able to add more money that will go into that. Secondly, within agriculture, I have good news for the areas that are represented by members here of Kenyans who do sugar farming, because we were able to add, Honorable Speaker, close to Kenya shillings 2 billion into sugar reforms. And these sugar reforms, Honorable Speaker, number one is to help our factories to be able to procure sugar cane using sucrose level. But also number two, we have input over close to 1.5 billion Kenya shillings into payment of arrears of sugar farmers who are owed monies of sugar cane that they have already provided. Honorable Speaker, we also have good news for farmers of Kenya who are engaged in coffee production, because we have added Kenya shillings 4 billion into coffee farming and specifically into coffee cherry fund, so that the farmers of Kenya who do a marvelous job in terms of balancing our payments, Honorable Speaker, to be able to produce more coffee, and that is why we have recapitalized the coffee revolving fund, Honorable Speaker, with Kenya shillings 4 billion. Honorable Speaker, there are much more that we have been able to do in these supplementary estimates, because we believe that a country that is run by people is dynamic. And therefore, the budget that we made in June, a lot has happened. And therefore, we just needed to align the government resources to be able to go into areas that we deem have very high or are much more effective in terms of turning around inputs into outputs. And Honorable Speaker, agriculture has been seen to be a part of that. As I come to the conclusion, It is important because budget making process affects the entire economy that I highlight one area that members have been asking. Members have been asking, why is our currency decimated? Why is our currency on the receiving end in regards to other global currencies? Honorable Speaker, for the last 11 times that the Federal Reserve has met, that is the Federal Reserve of the US, they have consistently been raising interest rates. In January of 2022, the Federal Reserve rate in the US was in the band of 0% to 0.25%. They have then raised interest rates for 11 consecutive times, up to now the band of 5.25% to 5.5%. How is that related to the Kenyan shilling? Honorable Speaker, what has happened when the US raises interest rates, there is capital flight from all the other emerging economies like Kenya and the rest. And therefore, we have seen a lot of capital outflows from emerging economies like Kenya. Of course, the investors going into the US where they don't need to worry about currency devaluation. Honorable Speaker, the second thing is the regime of the central bank. Honorable Speaker, the central bank has 3 critical areas that it needs to do other than regulation of the financial institutions. And the critical role of the central bank is to set prices. And there are 3 categories of prices. One, there is prices of commodities, which we call inflation. Then there is the price of money, which we now use interest rates. But then there is the price of the domestic currency, which is forex or exchange rate, Honorable Speaker. And Honorable Speaker, the regime of the central bank affects how the domestic currency or the direction it takes. For the past 6 years, we have seen in Kenya that the central bank, whereas we are known that Kenya has a floating exchange rate regime where it is a matter of demand and supply, within that floating regime, there are 2 categories. There is the managed exchange rate regime, which is floating, but also there is independent. For the last 6 years, Honorable Speaker, Kenya adopted a managed independent a managed floating regime, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, what we used to do, we could offload our dollars when we could see our shilling is weakening. And therefore, we were able to manage our local currency, although artificially. Honorable Speaker, the current regime is that of independent, so that the shilling gets its true value in relation to other global currencies. Honorable Speaker, some members would then ask, why is also the shilling losing against, for example, the UGX, the Ugandan shilling, or the Tanzanian shilling? But Honorable Speaker, if you check the economic data of the Ugandan shilling versus the Kenyan shilling, the Tanzanian shilling versus the Kenyan shilling, you realize we are at the same level we were during Kibaki's time, around 2010 or thereabout. Why? Because now when the shilling finds its true value, then it is able to relate with other currencies independently. And Honorable Speaker, that is the main reason that we have seen some devaluation in the Kenyan shilling as it fights its grounding in an independent floating regime. Honorable Speaker, with those many words, I really want to thank all the members of this House. The Budget and Appropriations Committee always benefit greatly by listening to all these members. The majority of them even come to my office. They give me a lot of guidance and counsel, and therefore the work that we do, including the one of supplementary budget, is the collective wisdom of this House. I also want to thank the members of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, to thank the leadership of the House, of course led by our clerk, the leadership of the Parliamentary Budget Office, and especially to cite one director called Dr. Maside. There is a very important people, Honorable Speaker, who have been by my side all through, and they are here. There is Dr. Abel and Julie, and there is Dan. And Honorable Speaker, by coincidence, I went to Kenyatta University, and almost all these economists are from KU, Honorable Speaker. Including, Honorable Speaker, the Deputy Majority Leader of this House and the Chairman of ICT, and therefore, Honorable Speaker, and I'm sure those who never got an opportunity to go to KU, they can still do a postgraduate something around that institution. Honorable Speaker, with those many remarks, I want to call upon the member for Oljororok, very effective member of our budget committee, to second this motion.
Proceed, honorable member. Give him a mic.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I second.
Thank you. That is KU in action. Order, honorable members. Honorable members, and order. Order, McClap. Honorable members, I now propose the question, which is that the Supplementary Appropriations Bill number 3, National Assembly Bill number 71 of 2023 be now read a second time. Honorable members, I want to give you some direction. This is literally a replica of the committee report. And I want us to agree how much time we want to spend on this. In my thinking, if the screen is full, contrary to my earlier advice, if we'll have some debate, it's now 3:15, I will allow short debate up to 3:45. Then we can, how much time do you want everybody to take? 3 minutes. Irene Mayaka, I've called you to speak. I see you on the screen. You have 3 minutes. At 3:45, I'll call the mover to reply.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I hear someone asking me my school. My school is the University of Nairobi, the only university with that there. Honorable Speaker, in regards to this particular bill, the appropriation bill, I want to stand here to just make a few remarks. And Honorable Speaker, I will be very brief because for me, the one area that I really have a concern for is R1017, where we have sought to increase the amount allocated to Statehouse to a whopping 2 billion. And Honorable Speaker, I keenly listened to the Chair of Budget when he was giving us his remarks in support of why it is 2 billion. And I remember him mentioning that the reason for this is that the head of state would like to have more meetings in Statehouse, including building a pavilion. But Honorable Speaker, we are experiencing extraordinary times, which means we need to make extraordinary decisions. And for me, if we must have meetings, then why don't we have online meetings? For example, why can't we have a Zoom meeting where the head of state can have Zoom meetings so that we even save more money? And for me, Honorable Speaker, I feel that this amount of money allocated is a bit too much. And the one area that I really want to support is the area of the diaspora. Diaspora has been allocated an approximate amount of 1 million. And for me, I feel this is an area that needed to have a bit more money allocated to them. And the reason for this is because we have a lot of investments coming from the diaspora people out there, and we need to capacitate and actually have proper infrastructure to make sure that we have actual data of which Kenyans are these that are in the diaspora, how much money are they making, how much taxation is coming through. But if we are allocating very little money towards this infrastructure, then we're not going to get the possible results. Honorable Speaker, as I finish, there's also an allocation for the Deputy President's office. And Honorable Speaker, I listened very carefully when the Deputy President mentioned that he also wants to eat seafood and lobsters in his office. And I'm just wondering, this additional allocation, is it for these lobsters and seafood? Because if we are all making sacrifices and reducing the amounts allocated to each and every area, then we need to make proper sacrifices. It cannot be luxurious sacrifices that we are making. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I think we really need to review the estimates that we've indicated here and have estimates that actually speak to the current economic situation of this country. I thank you.
Justice Kemei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity you've given me, and I'll be very brief. First of all, Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee for a job well done. When I was listening to him, Mr. Speaker, I thought I was listening to the Minister for Finance, and I tried to look around to see whether he was reading from something, and apparently he was speaking from his mind. That is the way to go. But, Mr. Speaker, I have 2 points. Number one, the increase for the Ministry of Education is well guided. We must have enough money for our JSS schools because the program that we started the other day, and it must work. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the increase in the amount of money given to the agricultural sector, and particularly, Mr. Speaker, as I come from the cane-growing regions of Western Kenya, the money that will be used to pay arrears for farmers for public-owned mills, that I want to commend the Budget Committee for that decision. Mr. Speaker, I'm a little bit worried about the cane testing units. And I want to find out, Mr. Speaker, of these cane testing units which have been put in various sugar factories in the country really working? We must ask the question because we are giving about 400 million for cane testing units, Mr. Speaker. I want to beseech the chairman of the Appropriations Committee and my chairman in Agriculture to find out whether these cane testing units are working. And finally, Mr. Speaker, he spoke about Kenyatta University. If that is where economists are produced, I'm also an alumni of the University of Wales, the School of English Studies in Cardiff. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Onchoke. Charles Onchoke.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this debate. We are having a supplementary budget, Mr. Speaker, against the backdrop where the country doesn't have a medium-term plan. One wonders how we can manage our economy without a medium-term plan. We are 11 months into the year without a medium-term plan. So the numbers probably we are talking about are flying all over the air. Mr. Speaker, listen to the chairman of budget talk about other economies. It's good to compare ourselves with the other economies. But it only goes as far as to give direction on how we need to manage our economy. The fact that the Federal Reserve has increased the interest rates of the USA for a number of times is not a reason for Kenya not to manage its economy better. Thank you.
Yes.
It's no reason for Kenya not to manage its economy better. We are in a situation where the interest rates are high, and the reason why our shilling is depreciating against the international strong currencies is because our imports are falling short of, our exports are falling short of imports. In other words, we are consuming more imports than exports. Why are our exports falling short of imports? The reason is our main exports like agriculture, tea, coffee, horticulture are falling. Why are they falling? It's because the Kenyan...
Your time is up. KJ. And you are not Nairobi, you are KJ, member for Dagoretti South.
Mr. Speaker, you got that very right. and an alumni of the great Kenyatta University, where I have great company in the plenary. I'm in the company of the greats like the Honorable Chair for Finance, the Honorable Chair for Budget and Appropriation, and many other greats, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to first congratulate the Budget and Appropriations Committee for burning the midnight oil and delivering this supplementary budget on time. What needs to be spoken, Mr. Speaker, because we can't go into the details in 3 minutes, is the style and manner in which the BAC approached budgeting this year. Mr. Speaker, the involvement of members of parliament, and especially the chairs of committees, was something unprecedented. We have to commend the new style and approach that has been adopted by the Finance Committee that is very inclusive and very considerate of the issues that are coming out from the members. As a member of parliament representing a Nairobi constituency, Mr. Speaker, we do appreciate that in this budget, we have been able to put in 1 billion Kenya shillings, monies that is being transferred into the planning ministry so that it can be appropriated through the CDF so that we can expand our primary schools in this city. Mr. Speaker, the primary schools in Nairobi have come to a state where some of them have been condemned as unfit for human occupation. Some schools that last were attended to in the era of the Nairobi City Commission. Some were attended in the era of the Nairobi City Council. Some were attended in the eras of Mayor Margaret Kenyatta. This is the time, Mr. Speaker, that we get the opportunity to bring up some of these schools up to standard. Mr. Speaker, the investment in the digital space is also commendable, Mr. Speaker, that the digital economy and the ICT sector did get a small boost with an improvement of the monies that have been appropriated to this sector. So, Mr. Speaker, I do call upon members of parliament to take the opportunity and honor the pledges that they made at the Kamkunji that you convened so that we can have digital innovation hubs in each and every single ward of this country. These digital innovation hubs, Mr. Speaker, are impressive. The few that have already been put up are already converting learners into earners. Young people who are walking into our TVETs, getting the digital literacy skills, getting trained on how to be able to work on online jobs and earning in dollars. Mr. Speaker, I will want to end it here by associating myself with the words of the chair that KU does produce brilliant minds, Mr. Speaker. Dr. Masinde and the other lady who has been supporting this committee are well known to me as extremely brilliant minds. And Mr. Speaker, there is a case to be made for the generational conversation that the people who are running the economy of this country, Mr. Speaker, are of a certain average age. When you look at the chair of budget, look at the chair of finance, look at Daktari and the people who are working, this is a generation that needs to make its mark akin to the generation of the Mwai Kibakis, the Kenneth Matibas, the Martin Shikukus, who are able to bring up a Kenya that was so brilliant in the 60s and the 70s that it was recognized all over. We are seeing a situation where we are bringing up leaders of a new generation that will make this country the envy of the people around this region, in the East African region, the envy of Africa and the envy of the world. Mr. Speaker, I do appreciate this opportunity to contribute to this motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Joseph Oyula.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me opportunity to also support the supplementary budget. Mr. Speaker, I start by congratulating the chair of the Budget Committee for being very eloquent in his presentation of this supplementary budget. Mr. Speaker, as much as I support the increases and the adjustments that have been made, I would want to ask the Budget Committee to start thinking towards the reduction of the there's an increase in the deficit. We should start thinking about the reduction of the deficit. Let us now start looking at a balanced budget. I know it is not something that can be done easily, but let us put our minds of bringing the budget, the deficit down, so that Kenya is also seen to be doing its operations in a more considerate manner. Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to thank the budget chair and encourage him to start looking at the reduction of the deficit in the future. Thank you.
Beatrice Kamei. You're on the screen. I see you exclaiming. Are you ready for this?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I want to first thank the chair of this budget and appropriation and his members for the work well done, and to also appreciate the fact that he went to Kenyatta University. Those are great brains. I also went to the same university. So I'm here to appreciate this budget. Now, when it comes to the side of agriculture, I was trying to look at the tea sector, and I was wondering how much has been added to it, but I am made aware that the side of fertilizers is where the tea farmers will benefit from. For the coffee, 4 billion is good money, and the reforms will support many of our coffee farmers. Kericho, we have coffee, and the farmers had left coffee because the payment was very low. With this increase, I am sure coffee farmers will smile all the way to the bank. But I feel more money should have been allocated, Honorable Speaker, to tea farming. Milk, Honorable Speaker, the new KCC, having been added 1.5p, is very, very important. And I know many of our farmers will benefit from that, small and large-scale farmers. For the education sector to have 70 billion is a great achievement. We are investing for today and tomorrow. And I appreciate this committee for that, Honorable Speaker. Not to forget that the money allocated to affirmative action, which is more on the sanitary towels, will be a plus now that it is domiciled not in the side of Ministry of Education, but in affirmative ministry, gender ministry. I appreciate that, Honorable Speaker. So with that, I say this is good, but I believe when it comes to implementation, it will be done to the later, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much.
Zamzam.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, na mimi niweze kutoa sauti yangu katika makadirio ambayo yameletwa hapa bungeni ya nyongeza. Niweze kusema kuwa naunga mkono ambayo imeongezwa katika elimu, katika mambo ya usalama, mambo ya afya na mambo ya ukulima, kwa sababu huu ukulima ndio uti wa mgongo wa taifa hili, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na kama ilivyo hali yetu imekuwa tata katika taifa hili, uchumi umekuwa mbaya, upande wa wakulima wakiongezewa itaongeza uzalishaji na ile economy itapanda juu, uchumi utakuja juu, na na imani baadaye rais wetu waweza kupunguza sasa zile task ambazo zimekuwa zikitujia kila wakati, Mheshimiwa Spika. Lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, pia lazima niangalie upande mwingine, nikiangalia ile bajeti ambayo umeongezwa katika Ikulu na ile ambayo imeongezwa katika naibu wa rais, Mheshimiwa Spika. naona hiyo kidogo ingewachwa mahali ilipo, kwa sababu mwanzo ilivyowekwa kwanza kulikuwa na utata, Mheshimiwa Spika. Wakipunguza lakini pia waweze kuongezea huku kwenye afya, kwenye ukulima, kwenye usalama na kwenye elimu. Mheshimiwa Spika, itagusa nyoyo za wananchi wengi na itaweza kumpa hata umaarufu zaidi katika uongozi wake. Itaweza kutuliza nyoyo za Wakenya ambao wanahangaika kwa wakati huu, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hiyo upande wa bajeti mimi naweza kusupport katika sehemu hizi 4 ambayo ni ukulima, usalama, elimu na mambo ya education. Lakini upande wa State House, Mheshimiwa Spika, samahani, mimi kama mama county naona pale ibaki vile ilivyo. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Thank you. Ferdinand Wanyonyi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me a chance to add my voice on this supplementary budget. First and foremost, I want to thank the the chairman, for at least allocating resources to areas that actually are need. I particularly, Mr. Speaker, and I've asked him and he's just told me, confirmed that agriculture today is a shame that Kenya, being a country on a tropical area, is actually a net importer of food in this country. Something that we must take it very seriously. I want to find out how much money has been given to agriculture, because, Mr. Speaker, we are embarrassing ourselves. How do we import food? How do we import maize in this country? It's because I think we have not taken it very seriously, but I hope the supplementary budget, and I want to look at the figures, that we actually be able to have more money put in agriculture, get irrigation equipment in these areas that actually need irrigation. I can be able to buy some equipment so that during the dry season, we can be able to irrigate areas to be able to produce enough land, enough food for this country. I want to agree that he has put some money, but whether it's enough or not, I think is something that we want to sit, and I've just talked to my chairman here, we have to sit down and look at it and be able to see if we can get enough money to be appropriated into agricultural sector of this country. It's a shame that we import food. Now Kenya is a net importer of the food, which is not something, Mr. Speaker, that is very embarrassing. With those few remarks, I support the supplementary budget, and I hope the chairman will look at it critically to be able to look at that, can be able to see what he can do. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ferdinand. Bowen.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support the supplementary budget. And congratulate my good friend, the Honorable Ndindi Nyoro. He's bragging about Kenyatta University. At the time, during our time, the Kenyatta University was a school of arts and education. It was a college of education and arts. Mr. Speaker, the Jomo Kenyatta University, and we are many of us here from JKUAT. We are many. So, Honorable Speaker, let me support this appropriation bill and commend the committee of Ndindi Nyoro for the good job. Mr. Speaker, the only issue I have, especially as a chair of Blue Economy and Water, Mr. Speaker, if you check the northern Kenya and the coastal region, Honorable Speaker, which is very bad, partly affected by the floods. Mr. Speaker, those regions, as we speak, there is no even drinking water. And if you see from the budget which the Honorable Ndindi has just tabled here, there is very little as located to those regions to address the issues of El Nino and the floods. Mr. Speaker, I appeared before the committee to present the case of these regions, and I don't know how much the Honorable Chair has given, because, Mr. Speaker, these are people currently, they are not even asking, they are not talking about coffee, they are not talking about maize. They are not talking about fertilizers. They are talking about livelihood, drinking water for them and their livestock.